President Trump singing the praises of Republican senators who held the majority, actually increased their majority in the Senate. But when it comes to the House and the 37 seats lost, at least by the Republicans, the president had this to say.
I didn't run. I wasn't running. My name wasn't on the ballot. There are many people that think I don't like Congress, that like me a lot. I get it all the time. Sir, we'll never vote unless you're on the ballot. I get it all the time. People are saying, sir, I will never vote unless you're on the ballot. I say, no, go and vote. Well, what do you mean? As much as I try and convince people to go vote, I'm not on the ballot.
Joining me now is Simone Sanders. He was the national press secretary for Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign and former special assistant to President George W. Bush. Scott Jennings. So the president just told Chris Wallace, I wasn't on the ballot. I'm not on the ballot. But let me play you just very briefly what he said before Election Day. Listen.
I'm not on the ticket, but I am on the ticket because this is also a referendum about me. Get out and vote. I want you to vote. Pretend I'm on the ballot.
So he's sort of trying to have it, I don't know how they say it, Scott, both ways? Is that how do they say it?
Yeah, that's how they say it. I think the president isn't wrong about one thing. I do believe there are a group of voters out there who did turn out for him in 2016 that may not feel close to either party, but for whatever reason, they decided they liked Donald Trump. They liked that he was not part of either political establishment, and they turned out for him. And in this particular election, you didn't have that same element. But the reality for the Republican Party is they have a lot of work to do ahead of 2020. The president has to be worried about the suburban drain. It's not just the yoga moms. You know, there's a few yoga dads out there, yoga husbands, that also drained away. And for the Democrats, of course, they have to be unhappy about the prospect of trying to put together 270 electoral votes without Ohio, which I think is going away for the Democrats, and possibly without Florida, right, which is a hump they couldn't quite get over, as we learned over the weekend.
Let's just stay on the president for 1 second here, Simone, because it seems to me that he clearly was, to an extent, on the ballot. And you had 61 million people voting for Democrats in this election, which is really an incredibly high number, almost at presidential level. Right.
Unthinkable for a midterm. Look, I think Donald Trump was on the ballot, but the agenda of the Republican Party was also on the ballot. And I think that's important. And the agenda, the buck stops with the leader of the party, and that right now is Donald Trump. Democrats across the country, they ran on health care, John. They ran on an economy that works for middle-class folks, not tax cuts for corporations. And it worked. And it didn't just work when we talk about the House. It also worked in these governor's races. I'd like to remind folks that Democrats now control the governor's mansions, sit in the governor's mansions in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, places that, if you'll remember, in 2016 were very key for Donald Trump's win. So look, I think coming out of a midterm election, Democrats should be thinking about, okay, this is what we ran on. Now, how can we get things done? And going into a presidential primary on the Democratic side, I think folks have to stay laser focused on talking about the issues and making sure you talk to every single voter, because that's how we got these gains across the country.
What about Ohio? Because Scott brings up Ohio, and it is interesting because among the states you did not mention,
it wasn't Ohio.
With Republican governors now, Ohio, Iowa, Florida, Georgia.
Georgia, oh, yes, I'm still hurt about that one. Look, I think that we have to do better. We have to do better. But there were really great races that were ran across the country in this midterm election. But that is why we have to talk to every single voter. You have to knock doors. It is not enough just to, put ads on television and do some digital. We have to make sure we are doing digital organizing, but also real in-person organizing, knocking on those doors. And I think that's what's going to make the difference in places like Ohio and Florida and Georgia, frankly, in the primary. I'd also like to note Florida. The ballot initiative, Amendment 4, passed. Over 1 million new voters are now eligible to vote, folks that previously lost their right to vote due to felony convictions. That's important. Georgia, 1.2 million voters in the electorate. I think that bodes well for the democratic process and maybe even Democratic Party.